Hey everyone, this is Kenji, and we're cooking pad Ka-Prao. So, Ka-Prao, my Thai pronunciation is very, very bad. Ka-Prao, pork with holy basil, stir fry with holy basil. Although in this case, it's sort of a misnomer because we aren't actually using holy basil. We're using just regular old sweet Italian basil. Holy basil is pretty difficult to come across in the US. Sometimes you'll find it at Asian markets. Sometimes I find it at the farmer's market from the farms that specialize in Asian vegetables. In the summer especially, sometimes you'll see it. But most of the time, what you're able to find is either Thai basil, which is the basil that has a sort of more licoricey flavor and it's kind of purple leaves, or you're going to be able to find this Italian basil, which is what you see in the summer all the time, and what we would make, say, pesto out of. The difference in flavor is actually pretty significant, but that doesn't mean that it's not delicious made with this type of basil as well. It's just a different dish. If you can at some point find holy basil, I would suggest trying it because it's a different flavor and it'll give you a different, unique thing that you might have never tried before. So I'm getting, I don't know, a half dozen, 6, 7, 8 garlic cloves in here. This is for about a pound of pork, which I'm doing. You can do this with any meat. You can do, chicken, turkey, pork, beef, duck, fish, whatever you want. Normally I would use Thai bird chilies, but I don't have any Thai bird chilies, but I do have this serrano, so that's what I'm going to use. So the serrano, I'm going to cut it in half, and then I'm going to what I'm going to do? I'm going to take some of the seeds out because I know my daughter's eating, and we have sometimes we have trouble with spicy foods these days, so I'll make it a little bit less spicy for her. So just take the seeds and ribs out so that it's not quite as hot. Of course, you can make it as hot as you want. So if I was making this for myself, or say like my dad or my wife, and Alicia wasn't eating, I would probably do and I was using Thai chilies, I would use probably 6 or 7 Thai chilies. It would be quite hot. This dish has those sort of classic Thai flavors, the hot, salty from the fish sauce. No real sourness to this, although you can always squeeze a lime over it if you want. And sweet from either dark soy sauce, which is what we're going to use, or if you don't have dark soy sauce, you can use a little bit of extra sugar. So normally you would do this with a shallot. The Thai shallots are these little red guys that have a sort of more intense flavor than a Western shallot. But I'm using red onion, which works just fine. We're just going to slice it up and then give it a quick rough chop. That's good enough. And this is all going into the mortar and pestle here. So mortar and pestle. I'm going to do a tiny little sprinkle of sugar, actually, just for the abrasive action, just to help this grind a little better while we're in the mortar and pestle. And then we're going to do it. If you don't have a mortar and pestle, you can chop all these things by hand. You can do them in the food processor. The mortar and pestle will sort of release a little bit more flavor, but in this particular dish, it doesn't really matter as much. As say if you're making, like a curry paste, for instance, comes out much better in a mortar and pestle than it does in a food processor, or pesto comes out much better in a mortar and pestle than it does in a food processor. So we want to. This dish, by the way, super simple. It's one of the easiest stir fries out there. It doesn't require a crazy burner. You can do this on an electric burner. You could do it in a skillet if you want. You don't have to do it in a wok. I'm going to do it in a wok just because I have one. Very few ingredients and very forgiving because you're working with ground meat. So even if you kind of slightly overcook it, it's still going to be tender. As opposed to say like sliced meat, which can start to get a little tough or dry if you overcook it. Ground meat also really picks up flavor really quickly, so you don't really need to marinate your meat like you would if you're doing a stir fry with more sliced meats. All right, that's about as fine as we need to be. Could go finer if you want to. Like you can reduce it to a paste if you want, but this is good enough for me. All right, so I'm going to preheat my wok. Get a kitchen towel. I'm gonna be cooking some noodles here later as well. So, a couple tablespoons of oil. Don't need a huge amount. And for this type of stir fry, the oil doesn't really need to be kind of smoking hot the way it would for some other stir fries. The way it would for, say, like, I don't know, like a lot of Chinese style stir fries, you get much higher heat. This one, you don't really need to. This dish, by the way, the recipe is based on my friend Leela's, shesimmers.com, and she has a couple books out. I'm not going to try and pronounce her last name because it's very long and it's Thai and I'm going to mess it up, so I will just call her Leela. Shesimmers.com. She has a book called Bangkok, where you'll find, I believe you'll find this recipe in that one, either in there or in her book, Simple Thai Cooking, or Simple Thai Food. I think it's called Simple Thai Cooking. She also has a book that just came out called about the Thai grill. All of her books are wonderful, and her website, shesimmers.com, is also wonderful. And she, in general, is just a wonderful person. She gave me some great advice the last time I visited Bangkok on places to eat. All right, so we're putting that paste in there. Just gonna let it stir fry gently. I mean, this recipe is loosely based on her recipe. It's not really exact, but this dish you'll find it like it's a very common street food. You know, like all over Thailand. In fact, you'll see street vendors making this. I've seen it served like in little cellophane packages on trains. They'll come around the aisles and serve it to you. Bus stations and homes. All right, now we got our pork going in. So we don't really want any of that to brown too deeply. We just want it to kind of get fragrant. And this is just ground pork. You want to use relatively lean ground meat for this particular stir fry. So this is kind of lean ground pork. And whereas some stir fries you kind of have to work in batches because you don't want the you don't want to crowd the pan because you'll start sort of steaming the meat as opposed to frying it. With this one, you don't really have to work in batches. You can just kind of go because you're not really aiming for this sort of really smoky, singed flavors that you get in some other stir fries. You really just want to cook the meat through. All the flavor is going to come from the aromatics and the sauce. So for our sauce, what we're doing is we're doing light soy sauce. So about a tablespoon or so. Fish sauce. This is 3 Crabs brand, which is not the best, but honestly, I use it and it works just fine. A couple tablespoons of fish sauce. Tiny bit of dark soy sauce. Maybe I do like half a tablespoon or so. And then a little bit of oyster sauce. The oyster sauce, I've seen it done with and without oyster sauce. Sometimes I feel like doing it with, sometimes without. Oyster sauce will add kind of some sweetness and definitely a lot of umami. Lee Kum Kee, they invented oyster sauce, actually. I think the story goes that someone was cooking oysters and the liquor, they left the pan on or something and the liquor reduced down. And as it reduced, it thickened up into this kind of rich gravy. And that's still how it's made, really. It's just oyster liquor that is cooked down to a gravy. So pretty intense, briny. It doesn't really taste fishy, you know. It's not oyster sauce. If you told me that it was vegetarian, I would believe you. Does it have other stuff in it? It probably does have like sugar and stuff like that. Yeah, water, sugar, salt, oyster, MSG, cornstarch, wheat flour, caramel color. Yeah. So they've started adding stuff to it, but it's a wonderful condiment. Goes really nicely on stir-fried greens. Actually, that's what I'm going to be serving with this. I'm going to be serving some, I think they call it moringa. It's these greens here. Let me see if I can find them. These greens, they have a kind of citrusy flavor to them. I found them at the Asian greens vendor at the farmer's market this weekend. They did a little like, tastes like sorrel. That's what it tastes like. Kind of a citrusy thing. All right, so this is almost done. So you see, I'm just kind of breaking it up as it goes into little pieces. About it. All right, I got my sauce. Stir it up a little. Pour it around. So this, you're going to want some rice, which I have cooking in the pressure cooker over there. Good. Definitely could be hotter. I'm going to add some Thai chili flakes to my portion and my wife's portion once we start serving this. But this, yeah, you serve it with rice. Frequently, you'll serve it with a fried egg on top. Last step, we take our basil. It's about like, you know, big solid handful of basil. It's hard to have too much. You just want to toss it until it's wilted. And that's the dish. And we will eat it with a spoon, like they do in Thailand. The proper way of eating like curries and dishes like this in Thailand, you get a spoon in your right hand and a fork in your left. And then you kind of use the fork to put stuff onto the spoon. If you want to like put rice and some of the stir fry onto your spoon, or some of the curry onto your spoon, and then you eat with the spoon. I'm just gonna eat out of the serving bowl. But... delicious. Come on, here you go. Sit. No, Shabu, you can sit. Here you go. Homon doesn't sit, by the way, because he has a injury on his back leg. He broke his knee a few years ago, and so it's a little painful for him to sit. So I never make him sit. I do make my daughter sit, though. All right. Pad Ka-Prao, Spider-Man's favorite dish, or pad bai arapa if you want to. I think if you want to be more accurate, if you're making it with Thai basil as opposed to holy basil. All right, well that's that, and I will see you next time. You know what? While we're at it, I thought I'd just show you real quick how to fry an egg in a wok. Let me get my spatula a little clean again. Spatulator. I'll just show you how excellent this wok is. All right, so you want a good amount of oil in there. Preheat it first till it starts to kind of lightly smoke, and then a good amount of oil. And then it's gonna make these kind of like puffy, crispy eggs. Whoop. Kind of splash the oil, splash the oil, splash the oil, splash the oil. That's what gives you those kind of puffy, crispy bubbles. That's how they get those eggs to do that in Thailand. Plenty of oil, hot wok. Oops, this guy. The wok has lost a little bit of its seasoning for some reason recently. I'm gonna grab my metal spatula for this. I'm sure your wok is perfectly seasoned, so it won't stick the way this one is sticking. Woo! That's how I like the eggs. Crispy and poofy. Oof, yeah. I love those crispy eggs. Oops, looks like we lost a little yolk on this guy. That's alright. I'm gonna splash them with a little touch of fish sauce. Eggs like that over rice, over stir fry. Love it. Alright, see you later.